Hey everyone, and welcome back to Motivation Library. We're always talking about the best books for building a better mindset. And let me tell you, today we're diving into one that's an absolute classic in the world of trading. It's called The Disciplined Trader by Mark Douglas.
A classic for sure.
Yeah, and even though it was written way back in 1982, it's still incredibly relevant for traders today.
It really is. It's amazing how timeless his insights are.
Totally. So before we get too far, can you give our listeners a bit of background on Mark Douglas himself?
Yeah, sure. So he started out as a trader himself, and actually he had a pretty rough start. Lost all his trading capital, not once but twice early in his career.
Twice. Wow.
Yeah, it was a tough way to learn, but he really took those setbacks to heart, and they kind of shaped his understanding of the psychology of trading.
Yeah.
And then later on, he became a trading coach, helped countless traders kind of get over those mental hurdles and actually find some success.
That's fantastic. And I think that's what we're really trying to do with this deep dive, right? Help you guys understand, what are those psychological things that really trip traders up?
Yeah.
And how do you develop the mental skills to overcome them and find consistent success?
Yep. And the disciplined trader really gives you a framework to do just that.
Perfect. So let's talk about those hurdles.
Okay.
What are some of the big ones that traders struggle with?
Yeah. So Douglas, one of his key points is that trading is more than just the technical stuff. It's really a mental game,
It is, yeah.
And most traders, they struggle not because of the technicals, but because of the psychology.
Right, because I can look at a chart, I can learn patterns, I can learn candlesticks, whatever. But when it comes down to actually pulling the trigger
Yeah, exactly.
and putting your money where your mouth is,
Yeah,
that's a different ball game, right?
totally, totally. It's not enough just to know what to do, right? It's about actually being able to do it under pressure.
Under pressure, yeah.
And Douglas, he saw this firsthand when he was, working in Chicago, observing all these traders, even the ones who had years of experience on the floor, even they struggled to make consistent profits.
That's kind of surprising, You think, oh, they're on the flare, they're in the action.
Yeah.
They're seeing it all happen. They must have some edge, but
You'd think so, right?
it sounds like it's really that mental game that makes all the difference.
It really does.
So, what are those patterns? What are some of those psychological traps that lead to those struggles?
Yeah, one of the most common ones is it's like a cycle
Okay.
of confusion, frustration, anxiety, and then ultimately failure, right?
Yeah.
A lot of traders, they come in, high hopes, high expectations,
Right.
and then they run into some losses, and then the self-doubt creeps in. The fear kicks in, and then,
Yeah, you start second guessing.
yeah, and it can really spiral out of control.
To start making impulsive decisions. Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
It really is.
And then, of course, the market itself, the environment of the market, doesn't really help either, right?
No, not at all.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Douglas, one of his key insights is that, the market is always right.
The market is always right.
Prices, they reflect what everyone believes, like everyone who's participating.
Right. So even if you think, oh, this is undervalued or this is overvalued, the market's like, I don't care what you think.
Exactly.
It's reflecting the wisdom or maybe the madness of the crowd.
Totally.
Yeah. That's a hard one to swallow sometimes because, you think you're smart, you've done your research, but the market's like, nope.
Yeah. You got to have a certain level of humility, coming into it.
Yeah.
To accept that the market doesn't owe you anything.
Doesn't owe you anything.
Right. And it kind of requires a shifting perspective, right?
Okay.
Instead of trying to impose your will on the market,
right?
Predict what's going to happen, you have to adapt to what the market's actually doing.
So it's more about reading the signals and going with the flow rather than trying to outsmart it.
Exactly. And this brings us to another key point that Douglas makes.
Right.
Markets, they are in perpetual motion.
Yeah.
There's no beginning, there's no end.
It's like a river, right? It just keeps on flowing.
Exactly, like a river, yeah.
Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's rough, but it never stops.
Yeah, and that constant change can be really hard for traders to wrap their heads around.
Right, because it creates this temptation to chase losses or hang on to losing trades and hope that they're going to turn around.
Yeah, you get sucked into these emotional cycles, the highs and lows. It can be really tough.
And then, on top of that, it's the market kind of messes with our our sense of time and reward and effort and all that stuff.
It distorts it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can have those quick wins. You might get lucky a couple of times and you
Yeah.
think, oh, this is easy.
Yeah, and it creates like false expectations.
Yeah, and then you start taking bigger risks and then
Yeah, and then reality hits.
boom, you're
Yeah.
you're back down to earth.
Yeah.
So it sounds like even successful traders, I mean, they must go through this too, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're not immune to these challenges. They still feel the fear, the greed, all of it.
Right.
The difference is that they've learned how to manage it.
So it's not about like eliminating emotions altogether.
Right.
It's about learning to control them.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we even start to develop those skills?
Well, Douglas says it all starts with understanding our beliefs and how we perceive things.
Our beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah? He says our beliefs act like filters, They
Right.
shape how we see the information that's coming in.
Oh, like that.
He has this, he uses this great anecdote in the book. It's about a guy who's giving away free money on the street.
Free money. Okay, I got to hear this.
Yeah, so this guy, he sets up a table on like a busy street corner, puts up a sign that says free money, and he starts handing out cash.
Wow, that's pretty generous.
You'd think people would be like lining up, right?
Yeah.
To take it.
Take free money.
But that's not what happened. A lot of people, they just walked right by.
What? Why?
Because their beliefs, they prevented them from seeing the opportunity.
Really?
They probably thought it was a scam, or maybe they were too proud to take, a handout.
Oh, interesting.
Whatever the reason, their beliefs blinded them to what was right there in front of them.
That's a powerful story
Yeah.
because it really shows you how much our beliefs can like shape our reality.
They really do. It's like they create this whole world that we live in.
And that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly. And Douglas says that, perception, it's not just passive observation, it's an active process.
Oh.
It's influenced by our beliefs and our past experiences.
Right.
He talks about this energy loop between like our inner world, our thoughts and feelings, and the outer world, the actual market.
So it's not just about what's happening out there.
Right.
It's about what's happening inside of us.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties together.
Good.
So tell me more about this inner world, this like mental environment, as he calls it. What is that exactly?
Well, he describes it as like a combination of all our memories, our beliefs, our associations, all stored as energy.
Energy.
Yeah, like mental energy.
Interesting.
And the thing is, this energy, it's not really bound by time, like the physical world is. So even things that happened a long time ago, good or bad, they can still be influencing us today.
So it's like we're carrying around all this baggage from our past.
Kind of.
That's
yeah.
shaping how we see the market.
Exactly. And that's why self-awareness is so important. You got to become aware of like what beliefs and patterns are driving your decisions.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about beliefs, we've talked about perception.
Right.
What's the next step in building this disciplined trader mindset?
Well, Douglas says a big part of it is learning to manage fear.
Fear, yeah.
It's natural to feel fear when there's like a perceived threat.
Right.
But in trading, fear can really mess things up.
Oh, yeah. Fear can, like, paralyze you.
It can.
It can make you hesitate or make, like, rash decisions that you later regret.
Exactly. He uses this great example of, like, a new driver.
Okay.
Imagine you're learning to drive for the first time. You're behind the wheel, cars all around you.
Yeah.
It can be pretty scary.
Oh, yeah. It's intimidating. You're trying to process everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens, your fear, it narrows your focus.
Right.
You start fixating on the things that could go wrong.
Like tunnel vision.
Exactly, like tunnel vision.
You're so worried about crashing that you miss, like, the street signs. You miss the scenery. You miss...
Yeah, you miss the big picture.
Yeah.
And in trading, fear does the same thing.
Got it.
It makes you focus on the potential losses and you miss the opportunities, or you hold on to losing trades for too long.
So how do we overcome this fear in trading? Like, what's the antidote?
Douglas says it's all about self-trust.
Self-trust.
You have to believe in your ability to make good decisions, even when things are tough.
I like that. So self-trust can help us stay calm and rational.
They can.
Even when the market's going crazy.
It can. And it all comes back to taking responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Douglas reminds us that the market, it doesn't create our experience. It just reflects what's going on inside us.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. It's our beliefs and our actions that determine whether we succeed or fail.
Okay. I'm really starting to see how all these pieces fit together now.
Good, good.
So I've got Beliefs, fear, taking responsibility. What's the next piece of the puzzle?
Well, from here, Douglas gets into the importance of self-discipline
Okay.
and having a solid trading plan.
The trading plan. Right. So it's not just about mindset.
Yeah.
It's about having a concrete strategy, a roadmap.
Exactly. You need both.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
All right. Yeah. So self-discipline, Douglas describes it as the mental technique that keeps you focused on your goals and, prevents you from making those impulsive decisions driven by fear or greed.
Yeah, I see how that would be like essential in trading. It's such a fast-paced environment. You need to be able to like stick to your plan.
Yeah.
Even when things are going crazy.
Exactly. And he gives this exercise in the book to kind of help you develop that mental muscle.
Oh, interesting. What is it?
It's pretty simple, actually. You just pick a task, something outside of your normal routine.
Okay.
And you commit to doing it every day for a certain period of time. It could be anything, like taking a walk, reading for 30 minutes. Doesn't really matter what it is.
So it's not about the task itself. It's more about like training your mind to stay focused.
Exactly. It's about building that mental discipline.
Yeah.
And then you can take that and apply it to your trading.
Right. So you can resist those impulses.
Exactly.
Avoid those costly mistakes.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Okay, so we've talked about like the importance of mindset, managing your fear, developing self-discipline.
Right.
What's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, Douglas, he goes into like the nuts and bolts of creating a trading plan and how prices move in the market.
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really practical.
Exactly. So he talks about this idea of like predefining your risk on every trade.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah, knowing exactly how much you're willing to lose.
Before you even enter the trade.
Before you even enter the trade. That way you're not making emotional decisions.
Yeah, because if you wait till you're already in the red, it's too late. You're going to be making decisions based on fear.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
I like that.
Yeah. And then he suggests that you become an expert in just one market behavior pattern.
As one.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to like, master every indicator, every strategy out there,
yeah, right.
You're saying pick one and really go deep on it.
Exactly. He says it's like, focus on one thing and really become a master of it.
It makes sense. I mean, you're not going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about depth over breadth.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. Now, what about this idea of letting the market define itself? What exactly does that mean?
It's basically about identifying like those significant reference points in the market, like, previous highs, previous lows, support levels, resistance levels, trend lines, anything that traders are paying attention to.
Right. So it's like you're looking at the chart, you're seeing where the action has been.
Yeah. And then instead of trying to predict every single move, which is, practically impossible,
right,
you place your orders in advance and you let the market trigger your entries and exits.
Oh, so it's like you're setting up a plan based on those reference points.
Exactly. And it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Yeah. You're not trying to like time the market perfectly.
No, not at all. It's more about, reacting to what the market's telling you.
Okay, that sounds way less stressful, to be honest.
It can be, yeah. And then finally, Douglas really emphasizes this idea of continuous self-improvement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's important in any field.
Absolutely, but especially in trading, because it's really a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah. So it's about looking inward, being honest with yourself about your strengths, your weaknesses, and always trying to get better.
Exactly. And to really understand this whole process, it's helpful to like revisit this idea that the market is always right.
Right. Yeah.
Remember, prices, they reflect the collective beliefs of all the traders out there.
Yeah. So it's not about whether you're right or wrong.
No.
It's about what the market believes.
Exactly. And that collective belief, whether it's rational or not, it's what drives the price movements.
Right. So we got to understand the psychology of the crowd.
We do. And Douglas, he also points out that, prices are in perpetual motion.
Right.
Like we were talking about earlier, it's like a river.
It's constantly flowing.
And it's changing direction. So, instead of trying to predict every little twist and turn.
Yeah, you just got to ride the waves.
You got to ride the waves, exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And this is where this idea of reasons being irrelevant comes in.
Reasons being irrelevant. What do you mean by that?
It's this idea that, the reasons why traders do what they do,
Uh-huh.
they're often irrelevant to the market itself.
Okay.
Most traders, they don't even fully understand why they're doing what they're doing,
Right on.
especially in the heat of the moment.
So it's more about recognizing the patterns of behavior
Yes.
than trying to figure out why people are doing what they're doing.
Exactly, yeah. He observed that traders, they often act impulsively,
Yeah.
driven by their emotions, and then they come up with like these rationalizations for their decisions after the fact.
Oh, yeah. You're trying to justify it to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where, the whole thing about emotions comes in.
Yeah.
And particularly fear. Douglas says fear is one of the biggest things that can sabotage your trading success.
Fear. And he talks about this, like, I remember he uses this analogy of the new driver.
Oh, right.
You know, how when you're learning to drive, you're so scared
Yeah.
and it makes you miss things.
Yeah, exactly. He says that, that fear narrows your focus and you fixate on the potential dangers,
Yeah.
and you miss all the other information that's out there.
You miss the big picture.
You miss the big picture.
Yeah.
And in trading, fear does the same thing.
Makes you make bad decisions.
It does. It makes you hesitate. It makes you hold on to losers for too long.
Yeah. All those things that we don't want to do.
Right. And this is where that whole self-trust thing comes in.
Right. So how do we cultivate that self-trust? Like, how do we actually build it?
Well, Douglas says, we have to become more conscious of like how our mental environment, our memories, our beliefs, all that stuff
Yeah.
shapes how we see the market.
Right. So it's about self-awareness.
About self-awareness, yeah.
Okay, so paying attention to our thoughts, our emotions, how we react to things.
Exactly. And he suggests a few steps that we can take to like start changing those beliefs.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we actually do that?
Well, first, he says, ask yourself some tough questions about your beliefs.
Oh.
What do you believe about risk? What do you believe about loss? What do you believe about being wrong?
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like taking inventory.
Yeah, like an inventory of your beliefs.
Of all those hidden assumptions that we're carrying around.
Exactly. And then once you've kind of identified those beliefs, he says, challenge them.
Challenge them. Okay.
Ask yourself, are these beliefs actually serving me? Are they helping me achieve my goals? Or, are they holding me back?
Right, because sometimes we're clinging to these beliefs that are actually like sabotaging us.
Exactly. We're not even aware of it.
And we're not even aware of it. Yeah.
And this is where he introduces, that self-discipline piece again.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk more about that. I mean,
Yeah.
we touched on it earlier, but how does self-discipline help us like change those beliefs?
Well, he sees self-discipline as a way to like stay focused on your goals, even when it's tough, even when you have that internal resistance.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's like, you want to do something, but then there's this part of you that's like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, it's that inner critic, right?
Yeah,
That's telling you to stay in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And he gives this exercise to kind of help you with that.
Okay, tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's similar to the other one.
Okay.
You pick a task, something simple, something outside of your normal routine.
Right.
And you commit to doing it every day for a while.
Okay.
It could be, meditating for 5 minutes. It could be writing in a journal for 10 minutes.
Right. So it's not about the task itself. It's about like building that mental muscle.
Exactly. It's about becoming aware of that resistance, that inner voice that's telling you to quit, to give up.
Right.
And then choosing to push through it anyway.
That's powerful.
It is.
Okay, so now that we've kind of built up that self-discipline, how do we apply it to changing our beliefs about trading?
Well, it allows you to, consciously challenge those beliefs, replace them with ones that are more helpful, more empowering.
Okay, yeah, so it's like we're rewiring our brains.
Kind of,
We're creating new neural pathways.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all making sense now. So what's the final piece of the puzzle here?
Well, now we got to understand how prices actually move in the market.
Right. So how do they move? What's the secret?
Well, Douglas, he says that, price movements, they're driven by the beliefs of all the traders out there about future value.
Okay.
And he talks about, the importance of these reference points.
The reference points, yeah. Like we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Remember, those are those price levels where, a lot of traders have formed expectations.
Right, like those psychological markers.
Exactly. Yeah. And these markers, they can actually create opportunities for traders to make money.
Oh, okay. I like that. Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. If a lot of traders believe that a stock, let's say, it's not going to go below a certain price,
Uh-huh.
they're probably going to be more inclined to buy when it gets close to that level.
Right, because they think it's a good deal.
Exactly.
So these reference points, they're like a floor or a ceiling.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And when the price gets near one of these levels, it can cause a shift,
Right.
in the balance of buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
And that can create a big move.
Oh, I see. So if we can identify those reference points,
Yeah.
we can anticipate those moves.
Exactly, exactly. And Douglas actually, he goes into a lot of detail about how to do that.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely interested in learning more about that. But before we dive into those specifics, I think we need to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
And when we come back, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the disciplined trader. All right, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into The Disciplined Trader by Mark Douglas. We've been talking a lot about the mental game of trading. And in this last part, I'm really curious to hear more about, those practical strategies, those setups that Douglas talks about.
Absolutely. So remember those reference points we were talking about?
Yeah, those psychological markers in the market.
Yeah, right. So Douglas says instead of trying to predict every single move the market's going to make.
Which is impossible.
Pretty much, yeah. We should let the market kind of define itself.
Okay, I like that. Let the market define itself. So how do we do that?
Well, by identifying those reference points, those key levels, and then placing our orders in advance,
So we're not like chasing the market, we're letting it come to us.
Exactly, exactly. And he gives this example of a pattern that he calls the retracement after a strong rally.
Okay, so what happens there?
So imagine the market makes a big move up, right? A strong rally.
Okay, yeah.
And then what often happens is you get this pullback, this retracement.
So it's like it takes a breather.
Yeah, like a pause.
Yeah.
And some traders, they'll take profits there. Others, they'll be waiting to, jump in.
They missed the initial move.
Yeah, looking for a better entry point.
Right. So how do we capitalize on that as traders?
Well, Douglas suggests, identify a significant reference point. Could be a previous high, could be a support level.
Okay.
And you place a buy order just above that level.
So you're anticipating that the market's going to bounce off that support.
Exactly. And if it does, boom, you're in.
You're in the trade.
And you can ride that next wave up.
And that's a lot less stressful than trying to time the bottom perfectly.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, of course, not every trade's going to work out.
Right.
Which is why, risk management is so important.
Always. So this kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier about, becoming an expert in just one market behavior pattern.
Yes, it does. He compares it to playing blackjack.
Blackjack.
Yeah. So, the odds in blackjack, they're slightly in favor of the house.
Right.
But a skilled card counter, they can actually shift those odds in their favor.
By keeping track of the cards.
Exactly.
Yeah. So by becoming an expert in a specific market behavior pattern, you're basically like a card counter for the market.
Exactly. You're studying the patterns, you're understanding the nuances, you're developing a system.
And you're getting an edge.
You're getting an edge, yeah.
That's awesome. And of course, this all goes back to what we talked about with self-discipline and having a plan.
Absolutely. You got to have those rules, those guidelines that you stick to, no matter what your emotions are telling you.
Right, because the emotions they'll lead you astray.
Oh, they will. They get you every time.
Yeah. Well, wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the disciplined trader. It's been amazing.
It has.
What are some of the key things that you hope people will take away from this?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just to remember that trading, it's a mental game just as much as it is a technical game.
Totally.
Our beliefs, our thoughts, our emotions, they play a huge role in the results that we get.
Absolutely. And I think, the disciplined trader, it gives you a really powerful framework for understanding those things.
It does, yeah.
And learning how to develop that self-awareness, manage your emotions, and become a more disciplined trader overall.
Totally, yeah.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with a question. What's one belief that you hold about trading, or even about yourself as a trader, that might be holding you back? If you could challenge that belief, what would happen?
That's a great question. Something to think about.
Yeah. And for those of you who are really intrigued by this, I highly recommend you check out the book, The Disciplined Trader by Mark Douglas. There's so much more in there that we couldn't even cover in this deep dive.
It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the disciplined trader.
It's been fun.
It has been. Until next time, happy trading, everyone.
Happy trading.